Ladies and gentlemen, we wish all our active members, enthusiastic attendees, and eager learners a wonderful day. Despite our different time zones and nationalities, this activity brings us all together. Welcome to the Institute of Global Professionals, a place where you can learn more, innovate, inspire others, and make a difference. I am Lursha El Pelaez of New Era University, Quezon City, Philippines, an early adopter of new modalities for dealing with the new normal. We believe that sharing information and overcoming educational obstacles helps people to grow. We hope that you will all join the IGP on a worldwide platform. Please join us for the remaining webinars. Check in on the IGP page, make a recommendation, and help spread the word. At any time, you can also like and comment on our webinar. Remember to tag your photos and share with your friends and community. Before we begin our program, let us first learn more about IGP. IGP is a global professional institution that serves as a resource for students and the community while also providing holistic social work and education in order to develop a skilled generation. Our mission is to empower people and improve the efficacy of training and consultation all over the world. To provide you with the best learning platform possible, we organize our webinars, trainings, offline and online courses with the best and most experienced speakers and coaches. IGP is an ISO certified training and education institute as well as a social organization. Internationally recognized, worldwide accreditation over 100 countries, 100 professions, and 3,000 organizations have been accredited. More than 700 speakers are expected. We have made a commitment to serve you. We hope you will join us in this long journey and that all of the webinars will help you progress in your chosen profession. Please share, tag, and comment again because your encouragement motivates us to do better to provide a quality service to all of you. To collect the certificate, please go to www.eduigp.com, courses, with the program title for today, Linguistic Fieldwork, Some Principles and Techniques. Then from the drop-down menu, choose Enroll Now. Certification can be obtained through the same website. However, only after the live broadcast. You'll need a code to claim your certificate, which will only give out during our live show. And hello also to Ka Marisa Gumabong, Ma'am LV Nool Montalvo, Gemma Benaleda, Randy Seed, hello, and Ma'am Charito de la Rosa. Good evening there in the Philippines. I'm also in the Philippines. To drum up your interest, you can attend any of our free international webinars by visiting our official Facebook page, group, and YouTube channel. Every active participant will be given an ISO verified e-certificate. We are delighted to welcome you all to this fieldwork of learning in linguistic. Please join us in the welcoming of the IGP 414 webinar on linguistic fieldwork, some principles and techniques. It is a great chance to welcome today's speaker from India. She is a research scholar of Sri Mata University. Without further ado, let us welcome Miss Ayushi.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Okay, so good evening. My name is Ayushi. I am a research scholar at Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, Jammu Kashmir, India. and I am working right now. I'm working on a language that is spoken in a remote district of Jammu and Kashmir, and it's a lesser known language. So this is exactly why I am in my presentation. I'm going to talk about why how fieldwork, linguistic fieldwork, is done, and why language documentation is important because it's closely related to my own subject. So I hope this presentation might be useful. They might be fruitful for all of you viewers.
It is really useful, ma'am. It will useful and it will help all the attendees. And everyone is saying good evening, ma'am Ayushi. So gorgeous. I read it from the comment section. You are gorgeous.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, ma'am Ayushi. Good evening, gorgeous. I think ma'am they will really learn from you because you're gorgeous as you are. So you just keep on smiling and we will do like this. When we're looking at you.
Are you sure? Sure. I tried to keep smiling. Okay.
Because we will spread smile because it's free. That's why we'll just keep on smiling.
Definitely. It is something that we should be spreading all over the world.
All right. So to our attendees, you can prepare your questions later while Ma'am Ayushi is preparing her presentation.
Should I share my slides? Should I begin?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All
Oh,
right.
see,
All
ma'am,
right.
you're smiling again. That's why I'm sure that all of the attendees will smile also.
No, I was actually waiting. I didn't realize that I'm free to begin.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We are also waiting.
Okay. Okay. I'll begin now.
All right. So without further ado, our gorgeous Miss Ayushi.
Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is there.
Okay.
It's cute.
So, yeah, just like me, right?
Yes, of course. That's so cute.
Okay. So, the topic of my presentation today is linguistic fieldwork. Like I said, I'm working on a language that is spoken in Jammu and Kashmir, which is the northernmost state in India. So now linguistic fieldwork is something that we need to do in order to create a grammar, in order to document a language, in order to create a multi-purpose lasting record of a language. Now, why do we do that? So in my slides, I'm going to talk about exactly why we do linguistic fieldwork and how we do linguistic fieldwork. So when I say linguistic fieldwork, uh, it refers to, I'm referring to the investigation of the structure of a language. So I am going to investigate the structure of a language, how it is spoken, how it is structured, the things, the various parts, the various the things that it constitutes of, and this I'm going to do based on the data that I will collect, based on the data that I collect normally from the native speakers, and then I document this language, I describe this language to form a everlasting record of this language. Now, again, why do we need to form records? Why do we need to document these languages? uh, in my last one of my presentations that I'd given at IGP itself, I had talked about language revitalization, language endangerment. So normally, even today in this world, we if we look around, we see so many languages that are our native tongues, the languages that are spoken by our parents, they are disappearing, they are getting extinct, they are vulnerable, they are endangered. So, in the years to come, there is a possibility that those languages will not be spoken by anybody, that those languages will not be taught to anybody. So, even now, we see that a lot of languages that our parents speak, it is not necessarily being spoken by their children. So, for example, let me take my own example. I am a speaker. My parents are the speaker of a language that they did not feel it was necessary to teach me their mother tongue, right? So it was very, it came as a shock to me when I grew up and I realized that I did not know the language that my parents speak, my own mother tongue. I was unfamiliar with my own mother tongue. So, as somebody who has grown up without learning their mother tongue, without learning the language of their her parents, I feel that it is the responsibility of every student, every researcher, every human, no matter where they are in the world, to work on their language, to try to preserve it. And if nothing, the least we can do for our language is talk in it, is speak, is promote it, and to not feel shy about our own language, to not associate any kind of stigma or taboo to the language. And yes, of course, English is a very important language and everybody is learning English. But the thing about English is, we everybody knows it, everybody is going to learn it one day or the other because we're going to need it. But in the race to learn English, it is very important to realize that to ask ourselves whether we are losing the touch of our own language, the touch of our own mother tongue, and is it worth it? Is it? I mean, English everybody is going to learn, no matter, even if they're not going to learn at the age of 5, they're not going to learn at the age of 15, but you're going to need it. So everybody eventually learns English, but it is the mother tongue that needs to be preserved, because that is the language that is dying away, your own mother tongue. So that is why the topic of documentation comes in, why linguistic fieldwork becomes important, that we need to document a language. So I would also like to ask, now when I'm talking about documenting, I'd like to ask you, all of you, do you speak, or are you speaking the same language as your parents? Are you using your mother tongue? Are you talking to your friends in your mother tongue, or have you switched to other languages? Have you switched to English? So you can comment in the comment box and tell me whether you were actually speaking in your mother tongues when you're talking to your friends, when you're talking to your parents, or have you stopped learning it at all? Are you and your parents, do you speak the same language, or have you switched to another language? Okay, so coming back to documentation. So when a language is being documented, it is documented through data that is collected empirically. So linguistic fieldwork consists of an empirically oriented research, which means that the researcher is observing the real life experiences of the speakers. The researcher is recording the real life language data. The researcher is immersing himself or herself. So the second last point I've mentioned the word called immersion in a bracket. So immersion is observing the language in its natural setting, in its natural environment, the direct experiences, the direct observations of the native speakers. So, as a linguist, as a researcher, we immerse ourselves completely in that environment to understand what is happening, to understand why a language is being spoken, how a language is being spoken, and what is happening to it. And linguistic fieldwork is also participatory in nature. When you go to a field site where when you're trying to work on a language, you try to participate as much as you can. You try to become a part of the society that you are interacting with. You try to become a part of you try to imbibe their culture within yourself. You get personally involved in this kind of research. You actively participate in the speakers' personal lives. You actively observe all the phenomenon that is happening. You interview them, you record, you elicit data, you analyze data. Okay, so again, I'm talking about the goals of linguistic fieldwork. Why do we do linguistic fieldwork? Like I mentioned earlier, to preserve our language, to save our language, to prevent a language from going extinct, to prevent a language from dying away, to prevent a language from vanishing from the face of the earth, as a lot of other languages have extinct. There are a lot of languages that have gone extinct now, and there are no active current speakers of those language. So that is why linguistic fieldwork makes sure that a document is created, the language is, people they try to preserve, the linguists they try to preserve the language. So the first main goal of primary goal of linguistic fieldwork is corpus generation, which is collecting data of the language in form of text, in form of documents, in any form that is available. So that is creating a multi-purpose, creating a permanent corpus of the language, so that if 100 years down the line somebody wants to uh, they're curious about what language did my parents used to speak or my grandparents used to speak, so they can open up a corpus and they can read it out, or they can understand, and anthropologists and linguists out there, social linguists out there, they can study this language. Then another goal of linguistic fieldwork is to interact with the native speaker. That and corpus is generated only when you interact with the native speakers. Data can be collected only when we actively interact with speakers. We seek data from them. We ask them how XYZ thing is spoken in your language, how certain phenomenon occur in your language, what word do you use for this occurrence, what word do you use for that phenomenon, so on and so forth. So these are the primary goals, and the secondary goals obviously are language preservation, language revitalization, and language contact. So when I say language preservation, again I'm referring to the same thing, that we are trying to preserve the language before it vanishes, before it breaks away. So language preservation occurs when we use activities that prevent the break in intergenerational transmission of language, or to create a new generation of speakers if break has already occurred. So you can ask yourself, like I said, do you and your parents speak the same language, or have you moved on to a different language? Are your parents speaking a different language while you have not learnt that language of your parents? Or if not parents, maybe you can even factor in your grandparents. Do your grandparents and you speak the same language? If not, you can clearly see, you can clearly see the divide that has been created between your grandparents and you, if you are not speaking the same language as them, if you have moved on to a different language, if you have moved on to a more prestigious language. So that is why language preservation is important. Then a language revitalization, that is also on the same terms, where we are trying to reverse the decline of a language, or we are trying to revive a language that is already gone on extinct, that is no speakers of that language are available, or no speakers of the or no people are speaking that language anymore, so we try to put life into that language. So that is called language revitalization. So, a language contact is another phenomenon that is studied when we are doing linguistic fieldwork. It is another goal where we try to study why a language has faded away, and if a language is in influence of another language. For example, a lot of languages these days are in influence get influenced by English. So in even in your local tongues that you speak, probably I'm sure there are so many words that you have that you have borrowed clearly from English language. For example, my my language is Hindi. The language that I speak is Hindi, but there are a lot of English words that I commonly use without even realizing, like television, TV. So I do not. If I anybody asks me, do you know what is the Hindi equivalent of TV, of television, I will not know. So there are a lot of words that I do not know what they are called in my own mother tongue, but I will know what they are called in English, since English is the language we are all running after. So language contact is a situation where the mutual influence of a language of languages are studied by linguists, by researchers, to understand how one language has influenced another language. Then another goal of linguistic fieldwork can be to substantiate theories, or to devise certain theories. A lot of theories maybe on language may be out there. So when you collect data from your language, you try to see whether those theories with whether those theories fit in, or you try to see whether the data fits in, or if it doesn't fit in, you try to devise a new theory. So this is how linguistic fieldwork is done, and how these goals are the goals that are associated with linguistic fieldwork. The last one is social linguistic goals. So social linguistic goals usually talk about things like language attitude, whether a person likes speaking in that language, whether a person is inclined in teaching that language to their children, what a person feels about their language. So all this comes under language attitude, how you feel towards your language. Like the language I am researching on, it's called Punchi. So when I go to my field site and I ask people, I ask the Punchi speakers, "Do you speak your language?" They say yes. I ask them, "Do you teach your children this language?" They say no. So again, this shows the language attitude of those people towards their own language, and it is sad to see that people do not want to teach their mother tongues to their children because they feel that their own mother tongue is probably not as good as a language like English or Hindi, or whichever language is considered as prestigious in your own area. So like in a lot of places French is considered superior, so people in fact uh, refuse to learn English also because they feel French is superior. So these kind of biases happen everywhere, and this is something that comes under social linguistics, where people we study how what language attitude people bear towards their language, what is the relationship between a language and the culture. Every language has a rich culture, every community has a rich culture which is deeply interlinked with their language. Let's say there are folk tales in every language, so I'm sure there are a lot of folk stories that you grew up listening to. There are a lot of proverbs that you probably grew up listening to, a very interesting proverbs that provided you with life lessons or moral lessons that your parents would use every time, when the situation was fit. So those things, those proverbs, those little pearls of wisdom, folk tales, it could be narratives, it could be the games. A lot of traditional games used to be like, these days everything has been taken over by video games, right? And these children spend hours on their laptops and on their computer screens playing video games, and nobody wants to go out and play the games that our parents used to play, when our grandparents used to play on the field, on in the street or outside. So everybody wants to stick to indoor games, and obviously things like COVID has accelerated the let's say the decline of traditional games. So it is very saddening, again it is very sad to see, I mean, the games that you grew up playing, nobody plays those games anymore. If we just sit back and observe what is happening around us, these things are something that will sadden anybody, that will make anybody wonder why is this game used to be my favorite. For example, like hopscotch is a game that is played by everybody. It is referred as different things in different languages. Different languages have different terms for the game hopscotch, but it's played everywhere. Or hide and seek. So every language, please write in the comment box if you have played hide and seek as a child, and if you've played hopscotch as a child. I would really love to know. But it is again, like I'm saying, I do not know anybody who plays hopscotch. I haven't seen children playing hopscotch. Now hide and seek, yes, I've seen a few children playing hide and seek, but again children would prefer playing mobile games, playing games on their computers. So these are some things that with the loss of these games, with the loss of our cultural wisdom like proverbs and folklores and folk tales, of language, of things that are associated with a language, could be medicinal plants, could be some home remedies. Like home remedies are something that everybody knows, and it is very peculiar to see that home remedies are usually associated with the language that you speak. So that is why they are known as home remedies, or they are called as mother's recipes, because they are usually in the language that your parents speak, and that is why they have been passed on from generation to generation. So uh, as a speaker of your language, I think it is your I mean, you should just look around and you should wonder to yourself whether you are using those proverbs, whether you're using those recipes, those homemade remedies, those all those things that help you associate with your language. So just maybe like today you can, like, for a few minutes you can just think about whether you're using those things, whether you're playing those games, whether you're using those proverbs, and what is happening, what is how the dynamics of your language are changing with every passing day. Okay, so moving on, fieldwork ethics. Now, ethics is something that is important, that you can find everywhere, in every field, in every discipline. Uh, Language, even fieldwork will. There will be certain ethics that you will need to follow when you're going to the field, when you're talking to the native speakers, when you're trying to document a language. So the first ethic here I'm talking about is the principle of incurred. Now, when why I use the word debt? So this phrase was given by Lebov, the principle of debt incurred. Now, when you collect data from native speakers, suppose you're working on a language that is not yours, that you are not a speaker of, but it is spoken in a state, in the next, maybe in a village around you, or in a state around you, or somewhere in the neighboring state, it might be spoken, and you want to research on that language. So you will go to their place, you will seek data from them, you will seek time, you will borrow their time, you will borrow their knowledge, you will borrow their, you'll probably stay at their house or wherever, and all those things that they will provide to you, they will provide their knowledge. So it's kind of a debt that you need to repay as a researcher, as a linguist. It is your duty that that debt must be repaid to them, and you can do that by, maybe by publishing, uh, by writing a comprehensive grammar, by compiling a dictionary. So dictionary is something that I think you don't even need to be a researcher or a linguist to compile a dictionary. All you need to do is be in contact with people of that particular language and just try to find out the meanings of that language. So a dictionary will be so handy. I mean, no matter what language you speak, so dictionary can be used by all the people of your area if they speak the same language. So you can create dictionaries which contain your language, as well as the English translations of those words of your language. So that is something that I think everybody can do. So dictionaries and word lists can be elicited, and it's a debt that a linguist, that a researcher, that a speaker must repay to the native speakers, because you've taken data from them, you've elicited data from them, and you need to support their community needs, their needs as a language community. And I also talk about cooperative research here, because that is also one of the ethic in fieldwork. Because when I'm talking about fieldwork, you alone, as a lone ranger, as a lone wolf, cannot do fieldwork. You will definitely need the help of the community, the language community. And when they will tell you, when they will help you with the data, so it is important that you also hear what they expect from you. You need to hear them out, what they want for their language, whether they want, sometimes, like some people, they say they want their language to be recognized, they just want their language to be acknowledged. They do, that people, the constitution does not recognize their language, that people do not even know that their language exists. So this is all what they want. So it is very important that we cooperate with them in a mutual kind of way, that you end up helping. Not only, I mean, you obviously, you're researching. As a researcher, it's your duty, but as a researcher, it is also your duty to help the language community meet their needs, meet their speaker needs, meet their linguistic needs. Some language community might need that their language become a part of the educational system. So again, these are some things that as a researcher you can help the community with. Now, again, honesty is a very important ethic. It is something that is extremely important in, again, in any discipline, in any field, whichever field you can talk about. So there are some ethics like honesty. You have to be honest with your work, the data that you are that you're eliciting, the things that you're writing, the results that you're positing, the theories that you are positing must be correct. And if by chance it is human to make mistakes, and if you have made mistakes as a researcher, definitely a lot of people make mistakes while they are working on a language. So but as a researcher, it is your duty to admit your mistakes. It is your duty to correct those mistakes. You cannot sweep it under the rug, because those are very important findings of a language. And probably 100 years from now or 10 years from now, somebody might read your research, and if you have published false results and you have not cared to revise them, they you might I mean a lot of you might lose your credibility. So it becomes very important that you are honest in your research, that you admit your mistakes, that you as a researcher are responsible to revise your results, to be as authentic as possible. You cannot fabricate your results. It is unethical to fabricate results. It's unethical, for example, it's unethical to collect data only from one single person. Suppose you're working on a language, and there is an entire language community out there, but you are collecting data only from one person because they live near your house or something like that. So in that case, also in that scenario, it is completely unethical to collect data from only one single person. The data can be biased, the data can be incorrect, the data can be misleading, because it is not authentic unless you have taken the same similar kind of data, and it has been has been proven authentic by at least 100 to 200 speakers themselves. So these are some ethics that we need to follow when we are doing fieldwork. Consent is one more important thing, that again, in any discipline, in any field, if you go, consent is something that will pop up when you are recording data. It is very important that you take the permission of the person you're recording. Number one, you go to them, you tell them, hello, I'm so and so, I am working on this language, I need some information from you, can I record you? So this is how we take consent. And then not only consent, we also acknowledge them when you are publishing your research, when you're publishing your dissertation. So it is important to acknowledge every person who has contributed in your data collection, all the native speakers. So it is very important, before mentioning them, before acknowledging them, again, it is important that you seek their consent. Is it okay if I write your name in my dissertation? So these are some things that need to be taken into consideration when you are working as a linguist, as a researcher. So these are some ethics. And again, respect is another fieldwork ethic. You have to respect the native speakers, you have to respect their beliefs, you have to respect their culture, even if you do not agree with their social practices, even if you do not agree with their political beliefs, even if you do not agree with their religious beliefs. It is important that you respect them. So like for example, when you go to data collection, in a lot of villages, there might be a lot of gender biasness. They might have certain beliefs about certain things, like maybe what if you go to a language, you go to meet somebody, a language community, and they tell you that the earth is flat. So again, it's not on you. You cannot tell them no, the earth is round. You are not there to do that. You cannot argue with them that no, hello, we do not believe that the earth is flat, it is round. Because it means that you as a researcher, you need to respect their beliefs, even if they are false, even if you do not personally agree to them. So respect is a very important fieldwork ethic. Again, immersion, I already talked about, where you come as a researcher, you completely submerge yourself in that environment. You try to blend in that social setting. You observe very closely what is happening around you. You become a part of that language community to understand their language. So these are few fieldwork ethics. Then coming to how we prepare for field work. So when you before you go to the field, there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind before beginning field work. Number one is philology. So philology means reading all the data that is available, reading all the texts, the documents that are available on your language, whatever that is available on the subject, on the language that you're going to study. So that kind of information, that kind of preparation is very important. When you go to a certain field, you have to read whatever old records are available. You have to make notes, you have to read all the dictionaries. So this can help you in a lot of ways. It can help you identify research gaps. Then, apart from philology, cultural preparation is also something that you need to keep in mind. You need to be aware of the history, of the culture, of the people that you are interviewing, of the people you are interacting with, the social hierarchy that exists in that particular society. So, again, like I said, you are going to a particular language community and they live maybe 100 kilometers away from the city. It's in a, maybe you're talking about a language community that lives in a village. So if you and they might have a norm that women in that community do not, maybe they keep themselves covered. So if you go wearing a dress in that community, uh, this is the sort of cultural preparation you need to do beforehand. You need to find out the dress code that exists in that language community, how people dress in that language, what people eat in that kind of community, the food that is available, their social setting, their hierarchy, all those things. These are things that you need to do for yourself to make your trip, your to make your journey successful. These are something that you need to do to make your journey smooth. So, and similarly, linguistic preparation. So it is very important that you need to find out first the language. You need to research about the language that you want to document, and it's very important that you learn a few words. So, like, when we are learning a new language, like maybe German or French, so sometimes they tell you phrases like hello or how are you doing, what is, or some things like what is, or where is the food, or things like that. So it is very important that you pick up on some phrases, some common phrases that the particular community uses, in order to appear like a learner. In order, when you go to the community, it must look like you are there to learn something. So these are certain things that make you feel, that make you look prepared. Again, budgeting is something that is very, very important. You need to be clear about your spending. You need to be clear about your financial aid. It is not easy to do field work. Traveling itself is can be very expensive at times. So secure your financial aid. At the first possible stage should be, you should be securing your financial aid, whether university is funding you, whether a government agency is funding you, whether a private agency is funding you. So there are a lot of projects. Sometimes the government is working on a project that is trying to save a language. So it is very easy to, if as a researcher you want to join that project, so the budgeting will be easier. The government will provide you with funds to, so that you can go and work on that language. uh, Again, it's very important to obtain permissions beforehand. So these permissions can be obtained from the government, from the university, so on and so forth. Then they sometimes, in some places, people are not willing to give you the data, or sometimes informants even ask for money in return of the data. So at times you have to oblige if you want data, because you're asking for somebody's time. So if somebody is asking for money in return, you have to oblige, and you have to find ways to budget in a way that you can provide money or gifts or whatever it is that the informant expects from you, in a limited way, in a way that you can also afford, that is in your budget. Then things like stationery will also become a part of your budgeting process. So these things that you need to arrange before going to the field work, before preparing for field work. And then equipments like recorders, equipments like video cameras, equipments like audio recorders, like microphone. These things are very handy when you go to the field, when you go for field work, where you go to the field site. These days, a lot of people rely on their cell phones because we have good quality cameras in our cell phones. We have the voice quality, the recording qualities, everything is good. But if you're working on typically or particularly on the sounds of a language, you cannot rely on something like a cell phone. You will have to get yourself a voice recorder, an audio recorder, maybe even a video recorder, a camera, to maybe record the events that they're celebrating, to record the festivals, the rituals, so on and so forth. Then psychological preparation is things that you need to clear in your own head before you go to the field side. There are things that you need to be prepared for. So like sometimes it gets really hard to learn the language, the language that you're documenting. It is obviously very handy if you learn certain phrases of that language, like I said, how are you and things like that, thank you, how to address an uncle, how to address an older woman, things like that. They are very, very handy when you are working on a language. So, psychological preparation means that you learn those terms, you are prepared for the situations that you might face. If you have any health issues, you prepare yourself, you take your medication along with you. If you have food issues, you have to mentally prepare yourself. Okay, I will eat whatever is given to me. So I was reading this book where this woman describes her experience in the field site, and she said that we went there, nobody wanted us there, so they put a lot of salt in our food. And but at the end, they did not say anything because obviously they had gone there to do field work, they had gone there as researchers, so they could not insult the people who the native speakers, even if they had put salt in their food. So these are some things that you need to be prepared. Maybe you might go to a place where there might be bed bugs. Yes, you can complain, it depends. What if there are no other options? And so these are some things you have to psychologically prepare yourself. For example, sometimes you go to a place that has no electricity, or you go to a place that's very polluted from as compared to the place that you live in. So these are the things you will have to bear with as a researcher, as a field worker. These are the troubles that you will face in the field, and you need to prepare yourself. Maybe the field site may be sunny, and uh, you're not used to that kind of sun exposure. So like when I had gone to my field site, it was very cold there. So I used to wait until it was summers, until it was hot enough, so that is when I would go, because I could not bear the thought of being in the snow, or because I could not bear the cold. So these are some things that you need to psychologically prepare yourself for all the problems that you might face. The dress codes, like I said, like a lot of societies have a particular dress code, and they might feel insulted if you do not conform to the dress code. For men, mostly it's everywhere jeans or trousers and shirts. But for women, like in India, for women, a lot of people, they like to conform to their cultural attires, which can be a sari, or it can be a salwar suit, and a lot of attires all over the world. But so it is very important that you keep in mind the place where you're going. So dress like that, dress in the way that the people, the native speakers, the field side, the people there, they accept you as you come. And the last point I have mentioned here is contacts in the field. It is very important to have a contact person. Suppose you go to a field and you know nobody there. How are you going to approach people? How are you going to ask them? Or how are you going to tell them, okay, I want to work on your language? So it is very important that beforehand you find a contact. And if in case you are unable to find a contact that who becomes a link between you and the informants, then you need to find out people who have had previous experiences with linguists or anthropologists. So these are certain ways that you can prepare yourself mentally, physically, and things like that, that will actually help you once you go to the field site. Because if you are not prepared for all these things, you should be prepared for all these things if you want to. Otherwise, you should just opt for armchair research. So There are two kinds of researches that my supervisor tells me of. One is armchair research, and the other one is dirty feet research. So if you don't want to get your feet dirty, stick to armchair research. Armchair research would mean that you're sitting and you're working. You're probably working on books, you're reading books, you are collecting data from online resources. So then you wouldn't have to go to the field site. But if you have opted to go to the field site, be prepared to get your feet dirty. So please, in the comment box, please let me know how many of you want to get their feet dirty in the future. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, whom to collect from. So, who to collect what from? Data. So, let's talk about who we can use as our informant, who can become our informant. Like, obviously, the main thing here is simply, I mean, it's very important that we choose somebody who has a positive language attitude. Again, I mean, I can relate to my topic when I go to the field site, or when I am talking to people of my research topic, of my research language. People say, oh, why are you documenting this language? This language is not even important. So this is something that a lot of people say, because they are bending more towards global languages like English. So or maybe English or German. These days people prefer to teach their children languages like German and French and English rather than teaching their mother tongue. So it is very important to understand who you are talking to and what kind of language attitude that person has towards the language. So if that person has a negative attitude, they will be reluctant, they will not be of help to you, they will not be of that much help to you as much as a language enthusiast can be of a help. If somebody is a language enthusiast who wants to work on their language, who loves their language, anybody who loves their language will definitely help you as a researcher when you go to the field site. People, with time, what happens, language attitudes change, because everybody wants to secure their own future, everybody wants to work according, they want to move according to the wave, they want to move as the world is moving. But it is important that we do not forget things like where our roots come from, where what language our parents speak, or what language do we find uh, our hearts attached to. So these are things that reflect our language attitude. Now, again, when we're talking about who to collect data from, data should be collected from all age groups. Uh, Although for some of the research, people, like a lot of linguists, prefer taking data from children, but I would suggest like a lot of data that is collected from children should be consulted only when you are taking data about like games or something like that. But when you're talking about syntax, or when you're talking about phonology, children above 16 should be consulted rather than young children, or rather than old people. Young children, sometimes their language faculty has not developed, they are not clear, they might have a stutter, they might have a lisp. And even old people who are really old, again, I'm not saying that you should not collect data at all from old people. Old people might have rich oral knowledge of their history, of their literature. A lot of folk tales that I collected were from old people itself. But when you're talking about things like phonology or morphology, when you're talking about sounds, so your perfect age bracket would be people who are above 16 and below 70, so that your language, your data is not. Data does not have any discrepancy, that your data is authentic, your data is correct. Then the next factor here to consider is gender. Now, gender, it's very important that you collect data from all the genders. Um there should be no biasness. Yes, a lot of societies might have certain kind of bias. If you are a woman, they might not feel comfortable as a man. If might not feel comfortable talking to you. If you are a man, women might not feel comfortable while talking to you. But it is important that your data becomes gender inclusive, so that because it is not as if men know more about a language than women or anything like that. So all age groups, all genders must be included. You can learn a lot from all these all everybody from every age group, from all the genders. So these things should be taken into consideration. Again, the next point is on the similar ground, literate as well as illiterate. So it is very foolish if you think that I will collect data only from literate people. Literate people can be very helpful. They can point you towards the right direction. They can give you exact kind of data that you're looking for. But that does not mean that we need to disregard illiterate people, because um, illiterate people, it's like they probably have not learned any other language. They are probably monolingual. A lot of times illiterate people are monolingual. So when they are, it means that they have less language contact. They do not switch their language. They do not indulge in code switching or uh, code shifting while talking. So it becomes very easy to collect data from illiterate people. They will give you more refined data than anybody else. Literate people, again, like I said, we tend to switch codes, we tend to use borrowed words, we tend to shift or switch between languages while speaking. Like I said, I do not know, I mean, while I'm talking in Hindi, sometimes I just without even consciously knowing, I use Hindi words. Sometimes a French speaker might be using English words without even realizing. A English speaker might be using German words without even realizing. So this is something that is very normal, very common. So that is why I'm saying it's important to consider literate people as much as a informant, or a good informant, as much as a illiterate person. Again, the next point also dwells on the similar notion. All strata of society, whether they are poor, whether they are rich, whether they are of a higher class, whether they are of a lower class, the things, language does not discriminate between hierarchies. Language does not discriminate between the lower sects or the upper sects. So it becomes important as a researcher that you take all these things into consideration, that you take data from, that you collect, you elicit information from all sects of society, from all age groups, from all genders. Yes, the speaker must be fluent. If you are taking data from somebody who is not fluent in their own language, your research might be compromised. So it is better to locate, to identify speakers who are fluent in the language that you're working on. And the last point here is willing and available. The person you are talking to must be willing to give you time, to give you data, to spare some time in their busy schedules and provide you with some information. They must be available, and they should not be overly generous. There are some people who, sometimes what happens is, they are overly generous, and what they end up doing, they end up sharing some sophisticated or prestigious kind of words, rather than, it's called observer's paradox. It's like, if I'm asking you to give me the trans or give me data of a particular, suppose I'm ask you, okay, what is XYZ sentence called in your own language? And in order to give me certain proper kind of data, you might end up unconsciously, you might end up using more prestigious word, you might try to sound sophisticated. Unconsciously you might give me data that is not raw, that is probably sophisticated, that you probably feel is more prestigious. So there are a lot of words that with time people stop using them, because they think that these words are not refined, these words are not sophisticated, these words are not cultured. So that they switch between words. So that is why it is very important that we do not collect data from overly generous people. It is We need to find a balance between people who are uh, available or who are overly generous, and we need to find people who can help us in a balanced sort of way. Okay, so moving on, data elicitation methods. There are a lot of techniques to elicit data. One of the techniques is interview method, which is, I think, the most important technique that I have used, that any field worker uses. Interview method, obviously, as the word says, interview, it means we are asking people questions, we are directly asking them, okay, what is XYZ thing called in your language? What happens when you do this? What happens when you say this? What is this called? What is that called? So on and so forth. So these are things that fall under interview method. Then questionnaires are a lot of types. We have telephonic questionnaires where we ask questions on the telephone. Then there are paper questionnaires, so which have open-ended questions or closed questions. Closed questions can be yes or no type of questions. Open-ended questions can be okay, what do you think about your language? So this is an open question. The speaker can indulge as much as they want. So the questionnaires are also a sort of data collection method. Then another data elicitation method is audio recording. Audio recording, it is something that is going to be very important, that is very fruitful, that you need to, that you cannot forget, no matter where you are, uh, no matter where you go, who you are interacting with, you have to record everything they say. And so in similarly, video recording is also important. Again, these things, we need to take permission before recording. It is very important that you seek permission before you are recording something, whether it's audio or whether it's video. And the last one is observation method. Observation method is when you sit down and you observe, when you try to observe what is happening, you try to understand the things surrounding you, you make mental notes, you write down, you observe these things. So these are a few methods that are used when you are, when you're talking about data elicitation. Like I said, the most common one here is interview method, but questionnaires are also an important part of data collection. Audio recordings, video recordings, these things, they go hand in hand. Okay, moving to my next slide. I hope I am not boring everybody, and but if I am, please forgive me, and I'll try to wrap up shortly. Okay. So next, I'm talking about interviewing techniques. Before interviewing anybody, it is very important that you state your objective. You tell people honestly, the speakers, you tell them honestly why you are working, why you are researching on a particular language, what you are, what your research objectives are, what your aims are, what you aim to achieve, why you are collecting data. Then the next interview technique is simple and direct questions. Once you have stated your purpose, once you have stated why you have come to collect data, like again, like I said, a lot of people, when you, if you go and tell them, okay, I am going to work, I am working on your language, I need data of your language, they might say, oh, why are you working on my language? It is not any good, or we are not going to use it anymore. Oh, it's not relevant. Let's talk about more prominent language. So again, you, at that time, you cannot sit down and tell them, oh no, you're wrong. But it is very important that you try to help them understand your viewpoint. You help them understand how their language is a part of the national heritage, how your language is a part of the cultural treasure. It's full of wisdom, and how it is important that we do certain things to preserve that language. So as a researcher, you state your objectives, and then you go on and ask them simple and direct questions. So this question might be, the first question might be, why do you think I should not document the language? And it is, again, these the answers that you get will reflect the language attitude of the speaker, which forms a very important part of your research, knowing why the speakers do not want to speak their language. So uh, it is a very important sociological aspect that becomes an important part of research, that it becomes an important part of language documentation. But mostly, when I'm saying simple and direct questions, you begin by asking their background questions, you begin by asking their name, which language do they speak, or what do they do, and so on and so forth. And then you move on to the difficult questions, or you move on to the complex questions, or the open ended questions, where you ask them, or where you elicit information from them, where you try to find out what they feel about their language, or where you try to understand how where they're coming from, and eventually you dive into the language, the questions that are related to the language, the questions that are related to the data that you need. Another point that you need to keep in mind is avoiding public space and avoid teaching. Okay, so when I say a public spaces, obviously uh, it is recommended that you collect data, that you elicit data, that you sit with a native speaker in a place where it's not very much crowded, where there are less people, because obviously more the people, the more the merrier. I know the saying is the more the merrier, but this does not work well when you are a researcher, a linguist, when you are trying to elicit data. When there will be more people, you will only end up getting confused. So try to talk to like 2 3 people at a time maximum. If you can get one speaker at a time, that's the best. And then the next point, avoid teaching. So what I mean by avoid teaching is that you are going there as a language learner. You cannot contradict them. It's about you, how what you should do and what you should not. It's not about what you can do. It's about what you should not. You should not be criticizing them. You should not be contradicting them. You cannot say, oh, XYZ speaker said this, ABC speaker that said that, how can you say this? No, every speaker is right, even if you know in your heart, or even if your data says otherwise, even if you are according to the data that you have collected from 100 people, it says that this data is wrong, this person you're talking to, this person is giving you wrong data. You do not tell them that, sir, this data is wrong, or ma'am, this data is incorrect. No, you do not say that. You simply, you make note of what they're saying, you record that data. There are gentler ways to approach this. You can ask them, sir, is it possible that this thing is also referred to as this, or is it possible that we also say something like this? So these are some gentler ways, but more importantly, we are not there to teach them. We are not, you cannot teach a native speaker his or her own language. No, you are, you go as a researcher, you go as a student, you go as a learner. So you go to respect, you have to respect them, you have to be open to whatever they are saying. So because no language data is incorrect. It is This is a very prominent saying among linguists, that no language is incorrect. It's just a way of speaking. Some people say that, some people say that, this that, but it's not like that. Does not mean that uh, just one form becomes incorrect just because other people are saying or using the different forms. So you go there as a learner, you go there, you do not correct them, you go there as a language learner. Then again, recording and making notes, at any point of time, recording is important. You cannot miss out on anything. Again, I would like to remind you, it's important that you take permission. Sir, may I record you? Ma'am, is it okay if I record you? Some people do not feel comfortable when they are recorded. Some people do not feel comfortable when you're making their videos. Like, I was talking to a couple of old women a few years ago, and I wanted them to sing, and they were very happy to sing for me. I wanted them to sing some folk songs, and they were very very happy to sing for me. But the moment I mentioned that, is it okay if I record, they all started telling me, oh, no, no, we don't want to be recorded, because they thought that I might probably judge them, or I might play it for somebody else and they might judge them, or I do not know what kind of hesitancy they had. They were hesitant. They did not they told me, please do not record. But then I had to convince them and tell them that it's okay, I'm using it for my own use, or things like that. I had to politely request them, and eventually they agreed to let me record. But these are things that are very important. When you are making notes, you might miss certain things, you might miss certain, no, like when I'm saying making notes, you are also making note of the facial gestures, you are making note of how their lips move, how their hands move, things like that. They become very important when you're talking about language documentation. So it is important you not only record, but you also make notes of these things. And if possible, videography, obviously, it is the most helpful thing ever. Okay, so moving on, wordless elicitation. How do we collect words? We first we begin with a basic word list. It can consist of a basic word list will consist of 200 to 300 words. Then you move on to more expanded word list. I have given here an example of Morris Swadesh word list. It's a word list that consists of 300 words, and it consists of basic words from ranging from household items to um, the things, the nouns that we have around us, maybe things like bag or clouds. What are clouds called in your language? What are bags called in your language? What is falling called in your language? What is hair called in your language? Things like that. So these are basic words. Again, we need to make sure that we are including only culturally appropriate words. For example, if you go and you're talking about word, you're collecting data, you're collecting words, and you start asking somebody to tell you the names or the words for body parts. Now, no matter who this person you're talking to is, they will feel uncomfortable when you're going to talk about things like body parts, or maybe some things might be culturally not appropriate to them, you know. Like a lot of people, uh, or they might not be familiar with those kind of words. Though the words that you must be eliciting should also be locally relevant. For example, let's say you go and you ask them. For example, in India, we avocado is not a fruit, or it's not available very easily. So if I have to ask my mother what avocado is, she will not know. So it is very important that we stay mindful of the words that are culturally appropriate, that are locally relevant. Again, as something to help you, visual prompts are something that will really help you for some people who do not, maybe who might not understand what you're talking about. So you can just show them the picture. What is this picture? What do you think this picture says? It could be of a person boating, it could be of a woman dancing. So visual prompts or visuals also help in getting information. So these are some things that you can use. And again, like for example, like you show the picture of an animal to somebody, a kind of animal that is not that person has never seen that animal because it's not there in the country. Like we do not have polar bears here, and if you show a person a picture of a polar bear, and they've probably never seen a polar bear. So these things you need to be mindful of. So be culturally appropriate and be locally relevant. Then moving on to expanded word list, then you make a more expanded word list. You can include 400 words, 500 words. You can talk about then you can indulge in social environment also. For example, you're sitting in the kitchen with somebody, or you're eating food with somebody. You can ask them, ma'am, what is this thing called? Sir, what is this thing called? This whatever you're eating. So these things also become a part of the word list. Suppose you're doing something, you can ask the native speakers, what do you think this, if you had to say this in your language, what would you call it? So these words, they become a part of your expanded word list. And again, it becomes very important that you use cross linguistic data. Cross linguistic data helps you, or helps the native speakers also understand what you're saying. So sometimes you try to make the native speaker understand, but you're trying to tell them, okay, I want to understand what is this thing called in your language, but they might not know what you're talking about. So that's when cross linguistic comparison can help in. You can tell them that the same words equivalent in English language or any related language that you think is spoken in parts around in parts around that area, right? So cross linguistic comparison is important. The next is texts. So when I say text, I am talking about any kind of written literature that is available in that language. So when you're skimming through that written literature, you will find a lot of words that can be helpful, that can become a part of your word list. Lastly, I have mentioned some semantic fields like kinship terms, pronouns, household items, flora and fauna, cooking items. These are some terms that form a significant part of your word lists. It is very easy to elicit kinship terms. You can ask them, oh, what do you call uncle in your language? What do you call auntie in your language? What do you call your brothers, your father's brother in your language, and things like that. So these form a very and they also are very relevant because they encapsulate a lot of information about that language. They encapsulate how social hierarchies work in that language, how families work in that language. When I say household items, it can say a lot of the household items or the kitchen items that are available in or the kitchen items that the person is familiar with, a native speaker is familiar with, will say a lot of things about the health of that particular language community, or the things that they eat. So these things are very they are full of a lot of information is encapsulated in these words. So it is very important that you elicit them carefully, you elicit them mindfully, you make sure wherever social setting you are in, you act accordingly. You ask, you take advantage of the situation. Suppose, like I said, when you're sitting in the kitchen, you ask, oh, how is this bread made, or what is this flour called in your language, or things like that. So when they're trying to explain it to you, that's how you get a lot of words from that list. Okay, moving on. Phonetic fieldwork and analysis. When you're talking about a comprehensive grammar, phonology, morphology, syntax, these things are an important part of your grammar. Phonetic fieldwork, you need to, again, like I earlier mentioned, you need a recorder, you need a good quality microphone that analyzes the sounds carefully, that you cannot make any mistake in recognizing the sounds, in analyzing the sounds. Try to sit in a noise proof environment so there are less noises, so you can understand what the person is saying correctly, so that you can recognize the sounds efficiently. Careful transcription and analysis go hand in hand. It is very important, like I said, record in a noise proof environment so that you are able to transcribe correctly. Sometimes in hurried transcription you miss out things like aspiration or tone or stress. So these things are very important in any language. So as a researcher, as a linguist, transcription is very important. It's very important that you make sure that the you are able to record the pitch, you are able to notice all these things about the subtleties of a language, like tone or any kind of phonotactics, whether it's stress or whether it's intonation, and all these things. Try to collect minimal pairs. Minimal pairs will help you understand the sounds of a language more easily. You can understand how some certain sounds contrast with each other. For example, pin and bin in English, they form a minimal pair. Only one sound is changed in both the words, so that's a minimal pair. Observe to find the exact place of articulation. Observe the speaker. See how their mouth is their mouth curving? Are their lips joining? If the lips are joining, you know it's a bilabial sound. If the lips are curving, you know it's a rounded vowel. So it's important that you make note of the place of articulation, the manner of articulation. And the last point I've mentioned here is language software such as Prath. Now you have collected all the data, you have connected all the phonetic data, you have collected a lot of words, a lot of sounds. Now what do? You try to analyze them using a linguistic software such as Prath. You try to find out the pitch. Obviously, as a human, it's very obvious that not a human or not everybody can detect pitch correctly, not everybody can detect tone correctly. So such long language softwares help you pick up on those things like duration or intensity. So these are some speech analysis software. I personally use Prath, so this is why I've mentioned Prath here. uh, okay, so I think this is my second last slide. Okay, so the second thing I'm mentioning here is morphosyntactic elicitation, which is morphology plus syntax. So When you collect word lists, after word lists you also need to collect short phrases, you need to collect sentences, so that you are able to find out the morphological paradigms, the morphological patterns, the syntactic patterns, the kind of clauses that are observed in that language, the modifiers, the words that are modified, the word formation processes like inflection, derivation. I've mentioned certain processes here, like let me give you an example, like the word boy in English, when you add the suffix s to the word boy, it becomes boys. Now, the meaning of the word changes completely. Yes, not completely. I mean, the meaning remains the same, but the number changes. So, with the suffix, you understand now you are talking about more than one boy. So, that is inflection, where you are changing the meaning without changing the grammatical category. When I'm saying derivation, in derivation, you change the grammatical category as well. For example, I say, he is my father. So here, father is a noun, but I say, if I say, he fathered a child, here the word fathered, it becomes a verb. The meaning remains the same, but the grammatical category changes. So that is derivation. Then there are other word formation processes like compounding, reduplication. Compounding, for example, black plus board, blackboard, right? So that's a compound word where two words are compounded together. Black plus board becomes blackboard. And reduplication is a phenomenon that is seen in a lot of languages. Please mention in the comment box whether you have reduplication in your language or not. For example, let me give you an example. If I have to say something like slowly, slowly. Now, in English, it does not make much sense if I say John walked slowly, slowly. But in a language like Hindi, it makes a lot of sense. It means the action is intensified, it adds a lot of meaning. So please let me know if you have reduplication in your language. Then lexical classes, when you're talking about syntax, it is very important that you recognize the lexical classes, whether you have nouns in your language, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, what kind of pronouns that the language you're working on exist in that language, and so on and so forth. Word order, whether the word order is subject object verb or subject verb object. Like English is a SVO kind of language. The word order is subject verb object. For example, John goes to school. So John is the subject, goes is the verb, and school is the object. So the order is subject verb object, SVO. While in a lot of Indo-Aryan language which are spoken in India, the word order is usually SOV, subject object verb. So these are some things that are very easily you can identify in your own language, whether subject comes first, whether object comes first, or the verb comes first. Agreement, whether the subject agrees with the verb, whether the subject agrees with the object, with the verb agrees with the object. So these things are an important part of syntax when you're talking about syntax, when you are studying syntax. So these things are something that you need to take into consideration. Clauses, various kind of sentences, I'm sure you've studied in school. Sentences, simple sentences and complex sentences, compound sentences, exclamatory sentences, interrogative sentences. So when you're working on any kind of language, these are the kind of sentences you need to collect data related to these kind of sentences. And then you try to find out the syntactic paradigm, you try to find out the syntactic patterns that a language depicts. The last point here I've mentioned is tense aspect and mood categories. Tense, as you all know, whether it's in what a person would say when you're talking about past tense, what a person would say when you're talking about present tense, future tense, aspect, progressive, habitual, perfective, and so on and so forth. Mood, realis or irrealis. So these are certain things you make sure of, or you find out when you're talking about syntax. Okay, so this is my last slide of the day. Uh, Here I've talked about how do you gloss and how do you translate. Now, as a efficient researcher, I think everybody who is interested in linguistics, who is a linguist, you must be familiar with IPA, which is International Phonetic Alphabet. IP is a language through which you can understand any language. So I'm sure if you've ever opened a dictionary, you in front of the word, the word is spelled out in IPA. Example of IPA is given in the picture that I've attached here in this slide. So the first sentence marked 27 is in IPA. It's a Hindi sentence. I will read out to you in a bit. The first step is transcribing in IPA. The second step is word to word translation. You mention what each word means in English. I have I'm saying English because usually when we are as a researcher, as a publisher, as a linguist, English is our source. English is our meta language. English is the language in which we are working. So that is why the translations always are in English. And then you break down the morpheme structure and you provide the grammatical information. Let's If you look at the sentence that I've given here, kala, it's a Hindi sentence. Kala ghoda tezi se bhag nikla. So kala here means black. Now grammatical information is encoded here. Kala here, the suffix a, it says that it's masculine, it's singular. So this is the grammatical information. Ghoda, it's horse, again masculine, singular. Tezi, speed, say with, bhag, run, nikla. So this is how you encode grammatical information. This is how you this is how you represent your data. You first you write it in, transcribe it in IPA, then you write the word to word translation, and along with the translation you can mention the morpheme structure, you can mention the grammatical information, so that anybody who does not know the language can understand what this word is. Like for example, here it's not mentioned, but black is a color, right? Ghoda is horse, which is a noun. So I should have mentioned. So the if anybody like on usually as people who work on grammars, we do not mention all these things, but it can also be done if you are uh, uh, if you are somebody who's just starting. So you can mention noun here. You can write a capital N to represent that this is a noun. And the last sentence here is the black horse broke into a fast run, which is a rough translation in English. All right. So this is how you represent your data when you are compiling, when you are writing an article, when you're writing your thesis, when you're writing your dissertation. So this is how your data is transcribed and represented. Okay, so I think this was all about my presentation. I hope I have made some sense to you. I hope you have understood some of what I was trying to tell you. And over to ma'am again. And if you have any doubts, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi, for making the effort to be with us today. We are extremely grateful for your numerous and insightful contributions to this webinar. And if you're asking that, you're hoping that your all of the attendees learned, I can read from the comment section that they are also thankful that you are with us today. So once again, thank you, Ma'am Ayushi from India. We are happy to be with you, ma'am. All right, so later we will see Ma'am Ayushi again for the question and answer portion.
Sure.
We will surely apply the linguistic fieldwork, elicitation, and the different techniques that we might use for this advocacy of linguistic framework. These are very helpful tips, ma'am, to everyone. So thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi. We will now proceed with the quiz competition. Don't worry, everyone. We will see each other. Don't worry. We will see Ma'am Ayushi again for the question and answer. All right, hello Philippines and hello world. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end, and it's almost the end of the webinar, and we encourage everyone to join the quiz competition. Thank you for joining Ma'am Marlita Nilo, Ma'am Ginalyn Resurrection, Ma'am Ameline Katubay, Ma'am Emily Refugo, Ma'am Melinda Civil Hispano, JC Rain Rosales, Alex Javier Alvarez, Melanie Obedoza Mara, Carmela Jane, Ma'am Elvina Montalvo, Mari Vic Clavesilia. Thank you all for joining and for staying. That's why we have the commitment to serve you because of all your patience to learn. Ryan Lepasana Paquibo, Melanie Obedoza Mara, Jessie Ray Miliamena, Ashok Sir Ashok Kumar Adhikari, and to the one of the hosts of IGT, Mikey Leonardo. In a few minutes, we will start this quiz competition. Good luck to everyone, and of course, your joining is already proven that you're a winner. Princess May P. Dizon, we have 37 participants. Ma'am Irma Garrigues, hello Ma'am Irma. Ma'am Cristina Del Rosario, Ma'am Ryan Lepasana Paquivo. Let us start the first question. What kind of research does linguistic fieldwork involve? Is it textual or empirical? Ma'am Julie Valencia is still watching. Hello, Ma'am Julie. It's empirical. Congratulations for those who got it correct. Lason Munyandi is in the first place. Now let's proceed with the second question. The process of observing the language as it is used is known as abstention or immersion. 76% got it correct. It is the immersion, the process of observing. Thank you, everyone. Lason Munyandi is still on top. And the third question, the mutual influence of languages on each other is known as, is it language contact or language renewal? Language contact, and 88% got it correct. Lason Munyandi is still in rank number one. Now let's proceed with the next question. Studying everything already written about a language is known as philosophy or philology. It's philology. Congratulations for the 57% who got it correct. And Lason Munyandi is still in rank number one, followed by Miss Carmela Jane. Number five question. A person who provides you with linguistic data is known as a helper or an informant. A helper or informant? Thank you so much, Ma'am Evelyn Waperi, and welcome to, and hello, Ma'am Julie. Informant provides you with linguistic data. Lason Munyandi is still in rank number one. Number six, what age group should the native speakers belong to? Is it 16 and above or 16 and below? 16 and above. That's the correct age group for the native speakers. Lason Munyadi is still on top. Next question. IPA stands for International Phonemic Alphabet or International Phonetic Alphabet. What would be your answer? So while we're waiting for the others to still answering, maybe some of you can prepare questions to our speaker too. And IPA means International Phonetic Alphabet. It's not phonemic. Congratulations, Lason Munyandi, you're still on top. Number eight question. How many words must a word list contain? Oh, I think I know the answer. Is it 100 to 200 or 400 to 4 to 500? 0 second left. It's 400 to 500. Rowena Simbulas is already in number three. This is the ninth question. The doubling of consonant cluster is known as gemination or repetition. I'm checking all your comments in our Facebook page. And it's gemination. Congratulations for those who got it correct. Lason Munyandi, you're still in rank number one. Congratulations. And now let's proceed with our last question. The word order of any language includes which three constituents? Is it subject, noun, or verb, or subject, object, or verb? It's subject, object, and verb. So that's the word order of any language. Dun, 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 dun. Congratulations to our participants, and congratulations also to our top 10. Congratulations, quiz competition winners for March 22, 2022. So you made it until the end, the top one, Lason Munyandi. Congratulations. And we have our fourth place, Rowena Simbulas. Third place, Ana Marie Joy Mercado. Second place, Carmela Jane. Fifth place, Joel Bernasor. And seventh place, Maribeth de la Cruz. Eighth place, Dionatel Kogay Caliz. Ninth place, why Mikey? Congratulations, Mikey Leonardo. And 10th place, Miss Ginaline Resurrection. Congratulations, everyone! This quiz competition is brought to you by Institute of Global Professionals. Thank you for learning and growing together. And now let's proceed with our second question. Hello, once again on stage. It's mirroring. Ma'am Ayushi from India. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Thank you for waiting until we finish the quiz competition.
Thank you so much. I am glad that people won the quiz competition.
Yes,
Yeah.
everyone, all of them wants to join. It's just that we only get the top 10. But of course, most of the attendees knows the answer. All right, so we can start answering the question, dearest participants. You can post your questions in our comment section. To our Miss Universe, I Miss Ayushi. They're not asking. That's why I'm just keeping the moment not to be dull. That's why. Dear audience, you can ask your questions. I'm also waiting. Ma'am Ayushi, so you're a research scholar for. I think you're very young at your age to be a scholar. So I think that would be a compliment if you're very young.
You're too kind. You're too kind with the compliments.
I'm just
Yeah.
too expressive. Oh, that we have a first question from Ma'am Nilomar Mercado from Niger. Hi, Ma'am. Ma'am Nilo. What are the advantages if an individual speaks multilingual?
Okay, well, I think if you are multilingual, give yourself a pat on the back. So you've not only learned your mother tongue, you've not only learned just one language, you've learned probably English. Obviously, you're asking me this question in English, and I'm sure you probably are familiar with another language as well. So I think it's something that we all should be proud of. Being multilingual has a lot of benefits. You go out, you might be, I mean, obviously English is important. You go to any place in the world, you will need English. But if you are multilingual, this can result in so many. It can open up opportunities for you in your own country itself. If you know the languages that are spoken in your own country, if you know English, if you know, maybe even if you know two more languages, I think it is something that is, as a person, as a learner, I think you should congratulate yourself, and I think it's really. I'm really proud of people who know more than one language, even if it's not by their own virtue, or maybe they've not learned on their own. They've probably learned because of the situation, but that means you're evolving. I mean, congratulations, you are somebody who are informed, you are somebody who can strive, who can who can be in competition with so many people. So you're not just learning English, you're not speaking the language that you were taught as a kid, you're evolving every day. So, and obviously educational opportunities you will find wherever you go. In your own country, your probably your mother tongue, your official language, your associate language, that holds value. And if you know English, then obviously wherever you go in the world, that will obviously benefit you.
All right. Thank you for that, Ma'am Ayushi. So maybe it can be a mode of survival also so that we can easily adapt to this people, to this culture, to this places. All right. So thank you, Ma'am
Yeah.
Ayushi. So from Rhea Marie Sison, hello, how can we foster enriching and preserving our own language when most people now know English more than knowing their own language?
Okay, so this is not something you can do in a day. Now, Again, it is something that researchers and it's on linguists, but as a person, as a student, as a speaker, what you can do is, one, you can remove any kind of stigma that is attached to your own language. Like, if somebody around you is saying, okay, please do not talk in that language, I do not like that language, that language is inferior. One, there are a lot of complexes attached to uh, any tongue other than English. English is considered as a superior language, and your own language, people will say, oh, please do not talk in that, that's so uncultured. So one, the impetus is on you, that you try to remove that stigma when you talk to people around you. That's the least you can do. The second thing you can do is try to make people aware, try to maybe help people realize how important their mother tongue is, how full of wisdom their own language is. And there should be no shame in speaking your mother tongue. There should be absolutely no stigma attached to your own mother tongue. And eventually you can reach out. If you are a teacher, I don't think there's any better platform than, if you are a teacher, please teach your children, please teach your students to be proud of their language, to promote their language. And if as a citizen you can write to your government, you can write to your you can try and make sure that the constitution recognizes your language. As a researcher, you can try and publish a dictionary, you can write a dictionary, you can elicit a word list, you can, very little things, these things very, if you can, like, you can work on a dissertation topic, you can, maybe you can write a paper on the proverbs of your language, maybe you can write a paper on the folk tales of your language, on the games of your language, and publish an article. I mean, you have a blog, write a blog. These very little things, they will not go in vain. I promise, they will not. And as a speaker, at the end of the day, you will feel proud of something you've done. You will feel that you have done something for your own mother tongue. You have done something for your own language.
Thank you for that, Ma'am Ayushi. I would like to agree that this small things will not go in vain, because every bigger thing starts from humble beginnings, from small things. So that really matters, even if it's small, as long as we're trying. All right. Now, next, let's proceed to the next question, or there's no question at all. Oh, I think there's no. From Rhea Marie Saison, thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi. I learned so much. Me too. I learned so much. So me, all of them are really expressing their gratitude to you, Ma'am Ayushi.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we have a next question from Ma'am Nilomar again. As a linguistics, what advice or interventions you can do for to those individuals who are pretending to forget their native language?
Pretending. All right. Yeah. So even I have seen this around me. The mother tongue that we have, I mean, the language that my parents speak. Like I said, I mentioned in the beginning itself, my parents did not teach me their language. They thought it was too inferior. They thought, because I studied in a missionary school and it was all English, it was an English school. So they thought they might be spoiling my chances by teaching me the mother tongue instead of promoting English. But now, as a grown up, I realize that this is so wrong. So as somebody who is pretending to forget their native languages, as somebody, if you think people around you are forgetting, I think maybe you can just try to, like, you do not have to converse in the language. Like, let's say you can bring out the various maybe unique words that are around you. So always notice that there will be words in your language that you will not find equivalent of in any language. There will probably a dish, a recipe, a product, a kitchen item in your language. There will be a way of making some product in your own language that will probably not be there in US or in UK or anywhere else. So I think these little things, like I said, some games, some medicinal plants, some flowers, some fruits, these very tiny things you can highlight, you can maybe post on your Facebook. Like, see, these days people post on Facebook, they ask, "Oh, is what is this fruit called in your language?" And when people reply, it feels good, like, okay, so people do remember their language. We are not sticking to just languages, we're not just sticking to English. Of course, English everybody knows, yes, everybody will learn. I'm just saying that there's so much impetus on a language like English, which is a global language. It is so important that you do not forget. And as a friend, as a researcher, as a student, you can try and just introduce words. You can try and discuss those words, those concepts. Like, there are concepts in your language that might be unique. There might be uh, things, there might be objects, there might be some actions in your language that do not exist in other language. There might be some concept that you're trying to explain an English speaker, they will not understand, right? Like I was mentioning reduplication, it's not there in English. So if I try to make somebody understand the concept of reduplication to an English speaker, they will not understand. So these are very tiny things that you can do on your behalf as a social media user. You can post things like very little things like this as FAQ or did you know facts like these.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi, and thank you also, Ma'am Nilo, for that question. And last question from Ma'am Evelyn Waperi. Why is it difficult to teach English in multilingual context?
uh, okay, so, well, I think there is a lot of pressure now, right now, to learn English, right? Which I understand, because it's a global language. There are a lot of opportunities. If you teach your students English, yes, they will have a lot of opportunities. But I think at the same time, the schools, the educational systems should not forget that teaching can be made very easy if regional languages, if local languages are also inculcated. Like I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, and I was telling my friend that as a kid I did not understand the concept of photosynthesis, or things like that, scientific concepts. They are so sometimes they can be so difficult. But imagine if somebody was teaching me the same thing in my local language. How easy would that be for me to understand if they only could explain those big science questions, scientific terms in my local language? How easy would it be for me to understand? And then, of course, eventually I will learn English, and I will adapt to the terms. So it is difficult to teach somebody a language that is entirely foreign to them, that their parents do not speak. But at the same time, I think uh, we should not forget that just because English is something that is there in our curriculum, we should not forget that our local languages also need to be promoted. That they are equally significant, if not more. They are. It's on us that we do not forget our languages, that we preserve them. That yes, we learn English, but also, and again, like I said, some concepts are very hard to understand in English. If the same concepts, like as a kid we would learn moral science lessons, and the same stories were there in your local tongues as well, maybe not the same story, but stories with the same morals, similar morals. So I think that kind of, if you try to explain these things in your own local language, it will be so much more beneficial, I feel that way.
Thank you, Ma'am, for that detailed answer for our question. Thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi. We are very grateful for being with us in this webinar of Institute of Global Professionals. So if we can just see you face to face, we have your shake hands as a sign of our gratitude for being with us. So let us have a virtual shake hands. And once again, let us give a virtual round of applause to Ma'am Ayushi, a research scholar, and we really learned a lot from you today. Thank you so
Thank,
much, Ma'am Ayushi.
thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, IGP. Thank you, ma'am, for welcoming here so warmly. And for the compliments, of course, and thank you for the amazing audience for participating, for listening to me so patiently, and for participating in the quiz, and for the comments, for the compliments, for everything. Thank you so much.
We hope that we made you happy with the compliments because that really came from our heart. It's not in multilingual context. It's in equal context. All
Could
right.
you compliment me in your own local tongue if you had to call me pretty or whatever you want to say? Please say something in your local language.
Uh, I'm an Ilongga mom, so it's one of the dialect in one of the province in the Philippines. So if it's a compliment, kagwapa gid sa imo, ma'am. So kagwapa means you're pretty, you're beautiful like that.
Oh,
So kanami gid sa imo gintudlo sa amon. So it means you really help us to understand. You will really learn a lot from you. So we hope that you appreciate our dialect too, ma'am, from Iloilo City in the Philippines.
that actually felt even better than when you said you're pretty, or just because you were saying it in your local tongue. That meant like you meant it from your heart. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much, Ma'am Ayushi, and thank you to all our eager learners and attendees for the day.
Thank you.
Bye, Ma'am.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay. Good night. Bye bye.
All right, so that's it, everyone. So we hope that you enjoyed today's session. So please don't forget to get your certificate with today's program name, Linguistic Fieldwork, Some Principles and Techniques. So with the code IGP 3876. So remember, with code, you can claim your certificates anytime. So if you cannot claim it tonight because there are maximum users who's downloading their certificate, you can claim your certificates tomorrow. So without an account on our website, you can't do anything functionally. So remember to please enroll in today's program. So once again, dear aspirants of knowledge, thank you for joining us today. Please leave a review, check in, and recommend on our page and spread the word to your friends and community. Remember to acquire your e certificate from our website, which is listed below. We look forward to seeing you all again at the upcoming webinars. It's people like you who make this webinar so memorable. Thank you for your patience and your active listening and participation throughout our activity. Congratulations also to the team and the organizers. Thank you for your patience. So once again, the code for today is IGP 3876 with the program name Linguistic Fieldwork, Some Principles and Techniques. Once again, I'm your host, Lersha El Pelaez from New Era University, Quezon City, Philippines, and I would like to thank you all for joining us. Everyone, stay safe and goodbye.